Привет. I'm Chuck Olinik, a Ukrainian-American who was baptized with the name Yaroslav, which is also the name I use in the Society for Creative Anachronism, a historical reenactment group. And a while ago, I decided that I was going to start putting a lot of my medieval research, especially stuff on Eastern Europe, into this video format so that information could be more accessible to people. And I started off with like the mythology and the folklore, and then I found myself having to actually get into the history, and I was wading through the primary chronicle, which is like the big resource, the primary source for a lot of information on Kievan Rus. And I started covering the rulers. So I did a previous video on Oleg or Oleg, and you're going to have to put up with me going through and dealing with the different pronunciations, because Oleg would be more of a Russian pronunciation, Oleg would be more Ukrainian. All right, and so I dealt with his story, and I dealt with the murder of Igor and of Olga, or Olga, right? Olga's vengeance against the Trevelyan's for murdering her husband. She will later be known as Saint Olga or Saint Olga. And now we're going to get to her son, Sviatoslav, who is known as Sviatoslav the First, or Sviatoslav Igorovich, or Sviatoslav the Brave, and he's a prince of Kyiv. Sometimes you'll read that he's listed as the Grand Prince of Kyiv, but I think that title's a little premature. But, I'll get into that stuff later. And he's going to live from 943 to March of 972. So he's not going to be around a very long time. And he's really only going to be ruling about a decade. But in that decade, he's known for his persistent campaigns in the east and in the south. And he causes two big powers in Eastern Europe to collapse, Khazar and the First Bulgarian Empire. Okay, we're going to get to that stuff. Now, he pretty much went native, in spite of being tutored by a Varangian named Osmud. The primary chronicle records that Sviatoslav was the first ruler of Kyiv to go with a Slavic name, as opposed to his predecessors. Oleg was Helgi, Olha was Helga. All right? And his Old Norse name would have been Sveinald. The Byzantines called him Sviatoslav. Now, he's gone with Sviatoslav. And in contrast to his mother's conversion to Christianity, Sviatoslav's going to remain a pagan. He is going to swear by Perun and Veles, swear his oaths. He feared that he would lose influence over his druzhina, his guard, and feared that they would mock him. We have a pretty good description of Sviatoslav's appearance. Leo the deacon described him very clearly, because Leo attended the meeting of Sviatoslav with John I Zimisces, and following the deacon's memories, Sviatoslav was described as a bright-eyed man of average height, but of stalwart build, much more sturdy than the emperor, and that he dressed in white, and it was noted that his garments were a lot cleaner than those of his men, although he had a lot in common with his warriors. Something else that was described as far as Sviatoslav's appearance, is he was doing stuff that was not very Varangian. He apparently had shaved part of his head and was wearing a type of scalp lock. It depends upon the illustration you're looking at. There's also different kinds of scalp locks. If you're looking at something like what Yul Brynner was wearing in Taurus Bulba, the one that tends to start maybe at the very top of the head or maybe towards the back, that's called an oseledets. However, there's another type which you tend to shave more like the top of the head and you keep the hair down in the front. That's called a chub. All right? So you picked up a little bit about hairstyling, which I know with me that's kind of funny. All right. So he's got the funny haircut. Oh, he's also apparently got a huge mustache. But that might also be a reinterpretation of things because, hey, that became a very fashionable thing in Ukraine. Let's see. He also wore a single large gold earring that had a carbuncle and a couple of pearls in it. All right, he's got several kids from several wives. All right, and we're going to end up having to deal with a few of them later on. Yarapolk and Oleg come from one marriage, and then from a woman named Malusha, who was of indeterminate origins. Sviatoslav has a son named Volodymyr, and Volodymyr is the one who's going to eventually convert Kievan Rus to Christianity. All right, so now we're going to get into his campaigns. Sviatoslav appears to have had little patience with administration. His life was spent with his druzhina in near permanent warfare against neighboring states. His greatest success was the conquest of Khazar, which for centuries had been one of the strongest states in Eastern Europe and who collected duties from the goods transported by the Volga. A visitor wrote soon after Sviatoslav's campaign, "The Rus attacked, and no grape or raisin remained, not a leaf on a branch." From the primary chronicle, the years 6464 to 6472, Common Era 956 to 964. When Prince Sviatoslav had grown up and matured, he began to collect a numerous and valiant army. Stepping light as a leopard, he undertook many campaigns. Upon his expeditions he carried with him neither wagons nor kettles, and boiled no meat, but cut off small strips of horse flesh, game, or beef, and ate it after roasting it on the coals. Nor did he have a tent, but he spread out a horse blanket under him and set his saddle under his head, and all his retinue did likewise. The primary chronicle praises Sviatoslav as a very heroic figure, and it remarks on his practice that he liked to send out warnings to his enemies that he was about to attack with the message, "Idu na vas," I'm coming for you. In 967, the Byzantine Emperor Nikephoros persuaded Sviatoslav to assist the Byzantines in a war against the First Bulgarian Empire. And Sviatoslav got paid like a whole bunch of gold and set sail with a really huge army, and it's going to include a bunch of Pechenik mercenaries. And here's what the primary chronicle has to say about that. 6475, the Common Era, 967. Sviatoslav marched to the Danube to attack the Bulgarians. When they fought together, Sviatoslav overcame the Bulgarians and captured 80 towns along the Danube. He took up his residence there and ruled in Pereiaslavets, receiving tribute from the Greeks. With this victory over the First Bulgarian Empire, you have Sviatoslav moving his capital from Kyiv to Pereiaslavets because, the way the primary chronicle puts it, All the riches flow: gold, silks, wine, and various fruits from Greece, silver and horses from Hungary and Bohemia, and from Rus, furs, wax, honey, and slaves. All of a sudden, the Byzantines aren't real happy with this situation, because here's this expanding empire. And so what they do is they convince the Pechenegs, who had served as, mercenaries in Sviatoslav's army, to attack Kyiv. And Kyiv is besieged. Sviatoslav's mother, Olga, is there with her son, Volodymyr, and Sviatoslav rides to the rescue and chases off the Pechenegs. And basically, Mom is begging her son, don't move the capital yet. Wait until I die. 3 days later, she passed, and then Sviatoslav decides he's moving the capital, and he appoints his sons as vice regents. So Yaropolk gets Kyiv, and Oleg gets the Drevelian lands, and Volodymyr is going to be in charge of Novgorod. In July of 969, Sviatoslav embarked on a second campaign into the Balkans in order to strengthen the conquered cities, and that was also to punish the Byzantines for provoking the Pecheneg attack on Kyiv. This time, however, Sviatoslav runs into a combined Byzantine and Bulgarian force. These are the people that he attacked to help out the Byzantines. And with the relatively small size of his army and lack of assistance from Kyiv, he suffers a major defeat and gets besieged by the Byzantine army until July of 971, and he's forced to sign a peace treaty where he gives up big portions of the Danube. Fearing that the peace with Sviatoslav's not going to endure, the Byzantine emperor convinces the Pecheneg Khan Kuria to kill Sviatoslav before he reaches Kyiv. According to the primary chronicle, after making peace with the Greeks, Sviatoslav journeyed by boat to the cataracts of the Dnipro, and the general Svinold advised him to ride the falls on horseback, for the Pechenegs were encamped in the vicinity. The prince did not heed him, but went on by boat. The people of Pereslavitz informed the Pechenegs that Sviatoslav was returning to Rus after seizing from the Greeks great riches and immense booty, but that his troop was small. When the Pechenegs heard this news, they ambuscaded the cataracts, so that when Sviatoslav arrived, it was impossible to pass them. When spring came, in 6480, Sviatoslav approached the cataracts, where Kuria, prince of the Pechenegs, attacked him, and Sviatoslav was killed. The nomads took his head and made a cup out of his skull, overlaying it with gold, and they drank from it. Now all the years of Sviatoslav's reign were 28. Thus ends the tale of Sviatoslav Igorovich the Brave, Sviatoslav the First. But he has sons who he has left as co-regents. Brother Yaropolk is in Kyiv. Brother Oleg is in charge of the land of the Drevelians. And brother Volodymyr is in charge of Novgorod. We're going to find out what happens to them next.